Mr. Capretta, you're a number cruncher, and you've gone into this quite a bit. And the issue, and bring up your chart of the Urban Institute chart if you could, because that's Gene Sterling's.
It is, yes.
This is the question I'm trying to get at, and I don't know if anybody really knows how to measure this very well. The interplay between shifting, employers dumping people into the exchanges. And this is an issue I think we've got to get into. And I personally don't think we're quite capturing this at CBO. I'll just give you a couple of anecdotal conversations I've had with large employers in Wisconsin. And I don't think we appreciate this. We're going to have a competitive dumping situation from my perspective, from just experiences with employers. Large employer in my district, privately held corporation, multi-generations have held this, lots of employees. Their competitors are publicly traded. They've been gotten the signal from their competitors that they plan on basically putting their people in the exchange because it's a $2,000 per person, fine, instead of the $15,000 to $17,000 they're now paying for employer-sponsored health insurance. This employer does not want to discontinue this benefit package. They don't want to discontinue providing what, for them, I think is about a $17,000 a year package. But when their competitors in a manufacturing industry, in a very low margin business, are going to have about a $15,000 per employee price advantage, or cost advantage, excuse me, they feel they have no choice but to dump their employees into the exchange. And so that kind of conversation is occurring around boardrooms all around Wisconsin. I know that for a fact because I talked to lots of employers who are telling me that. And I can only imagine that that same kind of a conversation is occurring around America. So give us a sense of how you see this interplay occurring between employers deciding whether it's in their interest for competitive reasons or other reasons to keep offering insurance, which will have to be actuarially equivalent to the exchange, or whether they'll put their people in the exchange, given that a lot of people will actually be better off at the lower end of the income or salary or pay scale. What interplay do you see coming? What are alternative scenarios that are probably more likely to reality? And then what are the fiscal consequences of that if these different kinds of projections bear out? Now, granted, we're stabbing at this, but if we're off by a few magnitudes, the cost of this thing could explode. Give us a sense of that.
Sure. First of all, just to be fair to CBO and others, I mean, this is incredibly complicated. We have a sample size of 1, Massachusetts being the only state that's really in this. And so the ability to model this out and understand how it'll play out over a decade is very difficult. Having said that, I think the point you're making is the right one, which is there's so much more money available in the exchanges than out of it for the low-wage population. As this chart shows, the break point in terms of being better off outside the exchange is way up at, upwards of about $80,000 a year. So below that, everybody would be better off in the exchange rather than getting the tax preference for the employer-paid premium plan. Employers obviously have a mix of employees, so any firm that has predominantly low-wage workers almost surely would want to go into the exchange. Even if they are above 50, pay the penalty. The penalties are factored into this calculation for the employer, and so you could still pay the penalty and still be better off, okay? That's what is likely to happen on the low wage. For small firms with the low-wage workers, they're going to probably end up in the exchanges. Now, for firms that have a mix of high-wage and low-wage workers, who knows what will happen over time. I mean, for them, if they put everybody in the exchange, the high-wage workers would be worse off too, and they wouldn't like that. So they're going to have to figure out a way to either keep going with their plan, which CBO assumes, or they're going to have to figure out a way to maybe separate into 2 different kinds of companies, one that's predominantly low-wage to take advantage of this new exchange, and one that's predominantly high-wage. I believe as new firms form, as new companies are built, this will be one issue, not the only issue, but it'll be one important issue they take into account when deciding how to structure their workforce and how to organize their company, because there's so much federal money involved here. Doug Holtz-Eakin, the former director of CBO, has looked at this and said, if the break point is at about 250% of poverty, if you just assume all of those workers, one way or another, end up in the exchanges over time and are not retained in the job-based system, the extra cost over just the first decade would be another $1 trillion. So we're talking, if you're off, as you said, Mr. Chairman, by just a little bit here, you're talking many, many, many more subsidies going out the door.
The break point is what percent of FPL in this chart?
In this chart, it's as high as, I think it's, I can't see the numbers from here, but it's about $80,000, I believe. It is, take my glasses off.
I should.
It's about, yes, it's about $80,000 in household income. This is in 2016 numbers.